From the syrupy, sugar-crusted floors of the pick-and-mix aisle to the WorthIt value revolution, Woolworths was the undisputed king of the British high street. And these are the 8 moments Woolworths gave you when you were young. The pick-and-mix strategy. The pick-and-mix wasn't a sweet aisle. It was a high-stakes tactical mission. By the early 2000s, Woolworths was moving 20 million kilograms of sweets a year, making it the UK's biggest candy retailer. Walking in, the vibe was a thick, synthetic scent of strawberry and the rhythmic clack of plastic scoops hitting the bins. Staff were famously militant here, lurking by the scales in burgundy waistcoats to catch grazers who thought a free cola bottle wouldn't be noticed. It was a high-margin masterclass that turned a 50p spend into a lifelong habit. You'd perform a silent calculation of weight versus volume, layering heavy fudge at the bottom to anchor the bag, while piling airy pink shrimps on top to make it look overflowing. The floor was a permanent hazard zone of squash jelly beans and sticky patches that could claim a sandal in seconds. If you were brave, you'd squeeze one last Turkish Delight into the corner, praying the cashier didn't spot the bulge. The top 40 record bar. Before digital downloads, Woolworths was the gatekeeper of the charts, accounting for nearly 20% of all UK CD and single sales. You'd stand at the record bar flipping through plastic sleeves while a staff member, usually wearing a look of mild boredom, manually stamped the price on the back. If you wanted the new Blur or Oasis single on a Monday morning, you had to beat the rush. It was the ultimate retention hook. You came for the 99p CD single and ended up staying for a 3-pack of light bulbs. The atmosphere was electric on release day, with a queue snaking past the stationery as everyone waited for the delivery truck. You'd clutch your coins, staring at the numbered chart wall, hoping your favorite hadn't sold out. Once you had that plastic case, you'd spend the bus ride home reading the sleeve notes. The staff were the ultimate gatekeepers, judging your musical taste with a single raised eyebrow. It was a weekly pilgrimage that defined the weekend. The Ladybird uniform monopoly. Woolworths owned the Ladybird brand, which by the 80s was the go-to for every working-class mom in August. The experience was a frantic, humid crush of parents fighting over growth room trousers and stiff white shirts. Service was brisk and no nonsense. Staff didn't have time for pleasantries while serving 5 million customers a week during the back-to-school peak. These clothes were built like armor. Heavy polyester blends designed to survive 3 years of playground football without a single reinforced knee giving way. Walking into the clothing section in late August felt like entering a battlefield. Moms would hold up skirts against their kids' waists, shouting over the din of crying toddlers. The fabric was famously scratchy, a mix of synthetic fibers that felt like wearing a burlap sack until 10 washes later. You'd be shoved into a tiny, curtained cubicle to try on a blazer 3 sizes too big, with your mom insisting, "You'll grow into it." It was built for punishment. The Chad Valley toy aisle. Chad Valley was the budget-friendly savior for kids who couldn't afford the posh department store imports. This aisle was a sensory overload of primary colors and the distinct, sharp smells of cheap plastic. In the 80s and 90s, you'd find everything from Action Man knockoffs to die-cast cars for under £1. The service was pure self-serve chaos, with staff constantly dodging toddlers while trying to restock shelves hollowed out by 11 a.m. every Saturday. You'd hear the constant pop-pop of cap guns and the screech of metal wheels on linoleum. Packaging was often flimsy cardboard taped back together by a frustrated teenager in a red waistcoat. It didn't matter. To a kid with 50 pence, this was the local treasury. You weren't looking for craftsmanship. You wanted something to survive a weekend in the garden mud. From tin drums to plastic tea sets, it was mass-produced joy that smelled faintly of a chemical plant. You owned the world. If this brings back memories, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel keep these stories alive. The Broken Biscuit Bin. The Broken Biscuit Bin was a masterclass in 1970s thrift. These were massive clear plastic bags of factory rejects. Headless custard creams and snapped bourbons, sold by weight for pennies. They were the Saturday tea staple for families on a budget, and the turnover was so fast the biscuits never had time to go soft. It was a pile-it-high, sell-it-cheap service that rewarded those who reached the back of the store early. There was a specific sound to those bins, the rustle of heavy-duty plastic as you dug for a bag with more chocolate-coated survivors than plain morning coffees. It was a lottery for the working class. You'd get home, tip the contents into a tin, and find a giant, fused clump of 3 digestives melted together. Those were the gold nuggets. Staff didn't neatly stack these, they were dumped into wire cages like livestock feed. It was honest, unpretentious, and the ultimate value hack. The in-store tea bar. In the larger stores, the tea bar was the social hub of the high street. It was all formica tables, heavy ceramic mugs, and the smell of toasted tea cakes. Service was traditional dinner lady style, efficient, loud, and slightly intimidating. You'd get a full English or a slice of Victoria sponge for a few shillings, served by staff who had often worked that same counter for 30 years. Steam from massive silver urns fogged the windows, creating a warm sanctuary from the gray high street outside. You'd sit on a plastic chair that screeched across the floor, clutching a mug so thick it felt like a brick. There was no artisan coffee, just strong, milky tea that could strip paint, and toast scorched by a blowtorch. Staff knew everyone's business, shouting orders over the hiss of fryers while wiping tables with a well-used cloth. It was the original community center where a pensioner and a teenager sat side by side, united by the smell of cheap frying oil. The WorthIt value revolution. Toward the end, the WorthIt range became the store's identity. This was the era of the 20-pound DVD player and the 5-pound kettle. The shopping experience became a bizarre treasure hunt. You'd find a toaster sitting right next to a bin of DVDs and a display of patio furniture. The goal was 100% customer retention through rock-bottom pricing, but it shifted the vibe from general store to clearance house. The packaging was unmistakable, bright, aggressive red and white that screamed cheap from across the store. It felt like a street market, with staff constantly wheeling out packets of 99p scales or budget headphones that looked like they might snap if you breathed on them. You'd go in for a light bulb and walk out with a DVD player you didn't need, purely because it cost less than a round of drinks. Quality was hit or miss, and the service was stretched thin, but people loved the gamble. The public's appetite for a 5-pound toaster was never satisfied. The gardening and home hardware. The back of a 1970s Woolworths felt more like a local ironmonger than a national chain. They sold everything from paraffin for heaters to individual bags of nails and Ladybird branded trowels. The staff usually knew their stuff, pointing you toward the right fuse while handling the Saturday morning DIY crowd. It was a reliable, unglamorous service. The only place on the high street to buy a birthday card, a record, and a hammer in 5 minutes. There was a heavy, oily smell here, a mix of metal and garden compost worlds away from the pick-and-mix sugar. You'd see dads in flat caps debating the merits of wood glue, or checking the weight of a hammer. It was the original one-stop shop before retail parks took over. If you couldn't find a plumbing washer, you just asked the man in the brown warehouse coat who'd been there since the store opened. This was about the basic necessities that kept a house running. It felt permanent.